Hey, do you guys recall a couple months ago, back on around, I think it was July 4th of this year, there was an Antifa cell in Texas who carried out an attack on the Prairieland ICE detention facility. And at least one officer was injured, and there were several suspects arrested. I think there ended up being a total of like 15 people arrested. Yeah, 15 defendants in the case. It was July 4th shooting outside of Alvarado, and there was an Alvarado police officer who was injured in the attack. They survived. But the defendants in the case, after initially being charged with I think they were initially charged with assault on a federal facility, attempted some murder of a police officer. I'm not exactly sure what the initial charges are. I probably should have checked them before I started the video, but you'll see why I'm not as concerned about them here in just a moment. Well, that all transpired in July. They were arrested. There was a manhunt for one of them that went on for several weeks. And after they'd been arrested, it was in September, they appeared in federal court and they were arraigned on charges. There were still two, I think, that weren't quite caught yet. They were caught separate. There was an initial group of like 12 or so who were apprehended. And then there were two others that it took some time for them to arrest. Well, around the time of their first appearance in federal court, Trump held a roundtable, which was a bit of a farce, if I'm being honest. I mean, Andy Ngo was there, and I thought Andy Ngo was great. But many of the people, it was a publicity stunt. Let's be real. It was a publicity stunt. However, out of that roundtable, we got this order from President Trump back on September 22nd, which is designating Antifa as a domestic terrorist organization. And I believe I covered this in a video of mine back around that time frame. It was sometime between coverage of Charlie Kirk's death and also the Bolton raid, and then James Comey being indicted, and then later Bolton being indicted. I think it was, I had it bookmarked for episode 338, but I don't think I covered it in that episode. So it's possible I skipped over this. And I'm sorry if I have. I feel like I didn't, but I don't recall exactly which episode back in September I touched on this issue. Anyway, there's a bit of an issue with this executive order, and there has been since it was announced. A domestic terrorist organization is not a thing. Like, it's not a thing in U.S. law. There's not a provision somewhere that says when the president can designate something as a domestic terrorist organization, which is why it's in quotes right here. See that it's in scare quotes right there? Because it's not a thing. What is a thing is that the president can issue an order and title it as such, even if domestic terrorist organization is not a thing under U.S. law. And the president can direct the departments and agencies and entities and officers and employees or agents of the federal government to go after them, to investigate, to find crime, to figure out who is providing material support, and investigate and prosecute anybody as the evidence they uncover, justifies. That's perfectly legal, and he does have that power, and that is a thing under U.S. law. So that's really the effect of this order, but it's always been kind of it's a very Trumpian thing. There's an aspect of Trump, which I'm sure many of my fan base appreciate. There's an aspect of Trump that is pure showmanship. It's the carnival barker. It's the wrestler in the ring. It's just a show. And this is one of those things where it's mostly just a show. Well, right after this happened, and this is where it becomes not a show. Right after that happened, two of the individuals that were charged in the Alvarado ICE facility attack were labeled as members of a North Texas Antifa cell. And the DOJ filed in this case and said, we are saying that these two guys are members of this Antifa cell, and we're going to charge them as terrorists, providing material support to terrorists. Now that's a thing under U.S. law, and DOJ decided to bring a superseding indictment in the case which charged them, which made this the first ever Antifa-related terrorism case. And that's where it caught my eye, is that this facility right here is the target of what is going to be under U.S. law, a case, or the subject is part of a case now that is the first ever Antifa-related terrorism attack case. It's called United States v. Arnold. And I've been watching this case ever since it, well, not since it came out, because actually the first indictment in the case was back in July. July 7th is when the first complaint was filed against 10 defendants. But now it's been upgraded to have more than that. I think it might be exactly 15, although maybe it's a little more. Anyway, what I want to tell you, there's been some developments in this case. Well, I'll catch you up on them later, but it's Cameron Arnold and Zachary Evans, I believe, are the two who are they're saying, DOJ is saying, are members of this Antifa cell out of North Texas. Well, today, things leveled up a bit, because today, November 13th, the Trump administration, or at least the State Department aspect of it, designated 4 Antifa groups, which are European-based, as terrorist organizations, foreign terrorist organizations, FTOs. And FTOs are definitely a thing under U.S. law. The cartels have been designated as foreign terrorist organizations. Various Islamic terrorist groups have been designated. The Muslim Brotherhood should be. I don't know why they haven't been. Don't understand it. But now these 4 European-based Antifa groups are. And this is a really big deal, because it means that anyone in the U.S. who is providing support to them or getting support from these groups or individuals affiliated with them can be charged for providing material support to terrorist organizations. It opens up so many more tools for DOJ to go after these individuals and after these groups. The 4 groups are Antifa Ost, the Informal Anarchist Federation, also known as the International Revolutionary Front, the Armed Proletarian Justice, and Revolutionary Class Self-Defense. This one is Greek, this one's Greek, and I think the other 2 are both German, or one of them's Italian, maybe. Let's see. Antifa Ost is German-based military group. Informal Anarchist Federation is an anarchist group that primarily operates in Italy, but has historical self-proclaimed affiliates in Europe, South America, and Asia. Armed Proletariat is a Greek anarchist group, and Revolutionary Class Defense is a Greek anarchist group. Now, just because they're European-based doesn't mean they don't have anything to do with Antifa outfits here in the U.S. I don't know that these specific groups do. We'll find out. But it's a level up in the battle against groups that are just terrorist groups, but their ideology is aligned with Antifa. The FTO designation, this is a thread that Senator Eric Schmidt, who was a key person involved in getting this designation to happen, in his thread, he said the FTO designation means it's a federal crime to provide material support to these groups or to provide resources to them. Their assets in the U.S. are blocked. So if they had any bank accounts or any property in the U.S., it's now blocked from being transferred or from them accessing it. Their members, affiliates, and even their supporters are barred from the U.S. and can be expelled if they're already here. So we can cut off these groups. And now this could serve as a model for other groups or lead to other groups to be designated. Once a case has been made for these 4 groups, I'm sure a case can now more easily be made for others. Now back to United States v. Arnold. I was today catching up with this case, and this is the Pacer webpage for it. And I noticed that there was a motion to designate this case as complex, which is a designation under U.S. law, which basically gives both sides more time to get to trial. The case was scheduled to go to trial in November 24th. And they're saying, look, we got like 5 terabytes or more of data. There's just so much material here for us to turn over in discovery. It's just not reasonable, or it's not even feasible for us to go to trial November 4th. So we want this case designated as complex. under 18 USC 3161. And the judge did grant this. But as I was going through this, I was looking at what their reasoning was. And big part of it was the amount of time it's going to take for both parties to go through the 5 terabytes of data in the case. And they're already engaged in plea negotiations with some of the defendants, and those defendants need more time. And it says right here that all of the defendants, well, it's actually, there's 17 defendants. No, it's 15. It's 15. Sorry, I don't have that straight. I keep on thinking it's 15 plus the 2 others, but I don't think that's right. Anyway, they've made their initial appearance, and 13 of the defendants have agreed to the motion to continue time. Meaning, okay, we're not trying to get this to trial as quickly as possible. Because there's so much discovery, and because those 13 defendants want to engage in plea negotiations with the government. But defendants Cameron Arnold and Zachary Evans don't agree. Accordingly, on October 15th, their cases were presented to a grand jury and they returned the indictment, which I talked about earlier. It was 7 charges that came out. And I feel like I went through those 7 charges on this show. But maybe I prepped it and didn't present it. I don't quite remember. Anyway, those charges include conspiracy to provide material support to terrorists, attempted murder, and discharge of a firearm during or in relation to furtherance of a crime of violence. Arnold and Evans were part of the militant enterprise Antifa. That was anti-government, anti-police, and anti-ICE, who planned, coordinated, and carried out an attack on an ICE detention facility by destroying and vandalizing property, and by shooting fireworks at the detention facility. This attack ultimately ended in the attempted murder of a police officer and 2 contract detention officers. The indictment further alleges that during and in relation to these crimes, a firearm was discharged. As of the date of this filing, the government has sent plea offers to all other defendants who appeared on September 23rd, 2025. And the government anticipates a fair number of these offers will be accepted. For those defendants with whom the government cannot reach agreement, the government intends to supersede the current indictment, adding those defendants into the Arnold Evans indictment as well as additional charges. This will increase the number of defendants in that indictment and add to the complexity of this case. Hence, them asking for it to be designated as complex, which means the Speedy Trial Act is, they're not going to have to deal with that. This case can be extended, and they'll have plenty of time to bring the superseding indictment and to go through all the discovery in the case and whatever new discovery they have, and whatever their plan is for the plea agreements that the defendants might reach. So this case, remember this, United States v. Arnold, first of its kind Antifa terrorism case. And even though Trump's designation back here, designating Antifa as a domestic terrorist organization, doesn't mean anything under U.S. law, really. It still has consequences. And today's a good day. This designation here of these European groups, that's a very good thing. And I hope to see more of it. And I hope you'll stick with me as I cover filings in this case. I'll be looking for this superseding indictment, and I'll do a video about that, and we'll see how this works out. It could lead to, hopefully will, lead to many more indictments of Antifa members and Antifa supporters and organizations that engage in violence against the U.S.